privilege. There's not a more fitting way to introduce our next speaker than to read from an online post. A September 2008 Vanity Fair magazine article about 12-term Congressman Ron Paul prompted someone to write in an online comment section these moving words. The writer identifies herself only as Marilyn J. must have been deeply touched by Dr. Ron's messages about liberty, freedom, and our responsibility to act politically. As you will hear from Marilyn's words and grammar, English is her second language. To me, that makes her words all the more significant. If someone who is new to our country can grasp Ron Paul's message, why can't all of us? Ron Paul tells us that he's often asked by other politicians, how do you do it? And why are there more of your bumper stickers in my district than mine? Well, listen carefully, because here's why. As Marilyn writes, I was born and grew up in socialist country of Czechoslovakia. I came to USA 38 years ago looking for freedom. Now I'm watching how we are losing our freedom. That is why I become Ron Paul's supporter. Become precinct delegate, attended the rally, came back energized, made a flyer, and went with it to our church festival last weekend. Talked to over 100 people and asking them to join us. Maybe half of them knew who Ron Paul is and thanked me for informing them about Campaign for Liberty. My next step is making more flyers and knock on every door in my precinct and move to the next precinct and the next and the next, waking people up. Ron Paul's commitment to limited government, personal freedom, and an uninhibited free market is just what the doctor ordered. It is my honor and privilege to introduce to you Texas Congressman Ron Paul.
Revolution is still alive and well. I don't have any announcements tonight, but I'm going to give you a hint. Stay alert for the rest of the week. We still have a few things to work out, but I think we're getting close. Stay tuned. It is great to be here among friends. As I always said, you probably heard me say this again before, and that is, when I go to speak on the House floor, or after I speak on the House floor, I never get applause. This is encouraging. So I'm very pleased that the momentum has continued. The truth is, when I first started in politics, I really didn't think I would ever be elected. because, you know, I took the same stance I take now, and I thought people would totally reject it and want to just stop instead of their liberties. But I was pleasantly surprised, and I thought, well, maybe if I just vote the way I'm supposed to, they'll change their tune, and they'll realize what I'm all about, and they won't re-elect me. I got re-elected. Now, when the last campaign started, I thought, well, we could do some good. We can contribute, and I wanted to do that because that's what I've been doing for a lot of my life, and that is promoting the cause of liberty. Amen. I was very pleased with the enthusiasm last time, especially when we went to the campuses and met the young people, and that continues. But where I was really amazed is, you know, during that last campaign, we had a little struggle. On occasion, the media didn't give us a lot of credibility. But when the campaign was over, lo and behold, instead of me being able to go back to my quieter life and nobody noticing, all of a sudden, you know, there was a crisis that came, and we had been talking about it, the financial bubble burst, and then we started getting the calls, even from the stations that said nothing very nice during the campaign. But that has continued, and last week we were up in New York, and we had a fair amount of interviews. A lot was to promote a book, and then also when I got back, I was pretty tired. I thought, well, I'm going to take Wednesday off. This is a good day to be off. And when I got home, that was the day, you know, that Bernanke had his first press conference. And that turned out to be a long, long day, too. I think I had 14 interviews. So people are getting interested, and they're getting interested in the right subject. They're getting interested in the sound money system and getting rid of the Federal Reserve. When an individual like myself finishes, I always keep saying, why didn't I have 60 seconds instead of 30, or why didn't I have 2 minutes, or why didn't I phrase my sentences a little bit better? But the one thing that I really didn't get to express, and it takes a minute or two to do this, and I'm sure you understand this already, but it's so important that everybody understands it. You know, the relationship of the Federal Reserve to the role of government.
Yes.
You can't have big government without somebody monetizing our debt.
Yes.
You can't have the wars if you don't have somebody monetizing the debt, because you can't borrow enough and you can't tax enough. If you want an entitlement system, you can't go into debt because if you don't have a Federal Reserve.
Right.
So the Federal Reserve is key to this. If you didn't have the Federal Reserve, what would happen? Congress would spend and interest rates would go up and they'd have to quit. So
Right.
this is the reason it is so important. Not only because the Fed encourages big government, but what it also does, it creates the distortions, the malinvestment, contributes to the debt, causes the financial bubble, which inevitably leads to the necessary correction and the collapse of the bubble.
Yes.
And that is what happened at the end of the last campaign, and certainly in 2008. And the American people are waking up. This is the first time in the history of the Federal Reserve we have them on the defense. The Federal Reserve Board chairman has to go and defend himself in press conferences and get on talk shows. You know, something big is happening in this country.
You betcha!
Unfortunately, that something big that we're in the process of is very, very dangerous. And it has to do with the monetary policy, the value of the dollar, and of course tonight the other subject, I don't even think I had a question thrown out now, this is, why are the prices high? Well, I did get to mention a little bit, yes. It isn't so much just the prices, it's the deliberate depreciation of the dollar done for the Federal Reserve. And they're worried about the default. I did get a chance to mention the default. Our government defaults all the time. I mean, in the past it was with the gold. They promise to pay the gold and then they don't. That's a default. And right now, they're worried, if we can't borrow more money and print more money, we'll default on the debt. Well, what do you do when you just print money? This is what they want to do. They want to default on the debt.
They sure do.
Because, you know, we owe $14 trillion. If you can get the inflation machine really churning and the value of the dollar loses 50%, in real terms, the debt has gone down to $7 trillion. So this is their deliberate attempt, but they don't really care about the people who suffer.
No, they
because
don't.
the people who suffer are the ones who have higher prices, lose their job, lose their houses, and who are the beneficiaries when they say we have to prevent the depression? It's the people who ripped us off during the bubble formation, and they get bailed out, the big corporations and the big banks, while the little people end up paying the higher prices. That is a message that we have to get across, because the crisis is going to come, it's going to get a lot worse, And we better win the fight, because if we don't win the fight for liberty, we're going to get something else. It's going in the wrong direction.
Right.
It's an authoritarian approach, a man on a white horse to come in and they're going to take care of us. They're going to protect us by protecting our interests overseas, perpetual war, and have cradle-to-grave socialism. And if that happens, it's all at the expense of our liberties, and that's what freedom in our country is supposed to be all about.
That's right. Amen!
You know, there's of course been a lot of talk on foreign policy, and I did get a chance to talk about a very important issue. You know, now that Bin Laden is dead, we could go into the details of how proper that was. But the whole thing is, that's over and done with, and what we must do now is grab the attention and say, yes, you told us that's the reason we went over there.
That's right.
Iraq and Afghanistan was supposed to be going after Al-Qaeda. Well, the ringleaders are caught, the people who perpetrated the crime are dead. It's time to say,
Bring them home!
Across the board, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to follow the Constitution and only have those issues that are authorized. But if we are going to have a chance to maybe work through the system, which I'm not predicting we will, there's no reason in the world why the country couldn't come to agreeing on all this overseas expenditures before cutting health care for children. I don't see the reason for starting on that. And then, of course, we should work our way out of it, but unfortunately, the odds aren't very good. So our job is to decide what the role of government ought to be. The role of government should not be to police the world, it should not be to police your life, and it should not be to run the economy. The government there, our government is supposed to be very limited in scope. We're supposed to follow the rule of law. And under those circumstances, what we do is we release the creative energy of each and every one of us to assume responsibility for ourselves and to do the work that is necessary. If we depend on the government, they have nothing. Everything they get and want to give to somebody else, they have to steal it from somebody.
Yes,
that's called
right.
taxation.
Right. Distribution
of wealth. A lot of people on the receiving end right now are starting to wake up, and they're getting very, very worried, and they should be. But they're not worried the same way you are. You're worried because the government's just going to come down harder on you, invade your privacy, and take away more freedoms, and tax you more, and all this. But the others are worried about, well, where's the gravy train going to be?
That's right.
But if we can work hard to convince everybody that it's in their interest, we will have a chance to restore our constitutional liberties here when the people believe it's in their best interest to do so.
Yes.
For so long, we've had this great prosperity because we've had a fair amount of freedom, and we still do have wealth in this country, which is rapidly shrinking. And if they recognize that the wealth is shrinking, we have to get them to understand that it's the government's fault. It's not the people's fault for this kind of a condition. But it's our responsibility to deal with the government. That means we have to change the government. We can't allow them to move in the wrong direction. Because even today, there are those in power who know exactly what we know about the financial monetary system, and they know a new monetary system is coming, and they're planning it.
Yep.
They're planning it to put it under the UN and the IMF and the World Bank. So that, of course, is the reason I have had a bill in for as long as I've been in Congress, and that is get out of all those entanglements